Welcome to episode 6 of the Intune Show hosted by the Interfaith Temple. I am Reverend Dr. Samora, and I'm honored to be joined here today by an extraordinary guest and friend whose life and work have been deeply rooted in transformation, service, and spiritual leadership. Reverend Dr. Gail Cantor has spent decades walking the path of conscious living, inspiring thousands through her work in transformational education, leadership development, and interfaith ministry. Her journey began in the Boston area, where at just 23 years old, she stepped into the heart of the consciousness movement of the 70s and 80s. Working for a groundbreaking company in transformational seminars, she rose to become a regional manager and director of communication, delivering life-changing programs to people across the country. In 1991, she co-founded a company that helped individuals and organizations across the US and Canada discover their unique place in the world and design lives of meaning and fulfillment. From tech giants like Hewlett-Packard to city governments and nonprofits, her leadership and communication consulting touched a vast range of communities. Dr. Gail's calling to a spiritual service led her to become an ordained interfaith minister in 2007 and to later return to earn a doctorate in ministry from the new Seminary for Interfaith Studies in 2015. And since then, Dr. Gail has been a great support to the seminary as dean and lecturer. And after her graduation, she transitioned into private coaching and consulting until another calling brought her to Endicott College, where she currently serves as the director of belonging and spiritual life and the Interfaith Chaplain. And what began as a part-time chaplaincy soon blossomed into a full-time devotion, bringing mindfulness, inclusivity, and spiritual guidance to the lives of many college students. And through it all, Reverend Dr. Gail Cantor has followed a powerful inner compass, a deep desire to make a difference and create a more conscious, connected world. So I am deeply excited to welcome her today. Hello, Dr. Gail. How are you?
I'm so great. Thank you for having me be here today. I'm excited about this.
Yes, well, many people that have been watching these episodes know that my real aim here is to highlight the paths that many people that have come through the doors of the new seminary and how wonderful you have taken this to, the world in ways of creating new ways for people to experience whether it's spirituality or a faith-based understanding, or like simply put, an inclusivity, a feeling of belonging. And I know you've done that in such a brilliant way. So can you talk a bit about what the spirit of belonging has done in your work and in your ministry?
Yeah, absolutely. I think everything I've done, I always end up building community around myself. And when I say that, I mean people come together and they communicate, they engage together, they become something together. People have a feeling of belonging and being up to something and wanting to engage together, which is what we all are doing on the planet anyway. And it's sort of what drives me is wanting to have, in our center at Endicott, we have a theme called Belonging is Our Sixth Sense. So you receive the world by all your senses. You touch, you feel, you taste, all of these things. But one way you really receive the world is whether you feel like you belong. It's an actual sense, I think. And when people feel like they belong even to themselves, that they're in their own skin, their own way, that is fitting to them, then nothing stops you. You're free, you're able, you're not comparing yourself to others,
Mm.
you're able to engage. And so to me, I'm always generating this. I'm always looking for that feeling myself. And I think it's just at the heart of everything spiritual. And it's what all our faith tradition, as a minister, um, it's what all our faith traditions are about. Our faith traditions tell us whichever one or many people pick to study or to practice, they're all about the same thing, which is how do we all get along? How do we all live a good life? It's not about an individual and an ego and you have to have an ego, you have to be your own individual, but without that sense of belonging and engagement, what do we have? And so I've been privileged in the last 8 years to really bring that to a college campus. Endicott's a small private college, and to bring it to the faculty, staff, and students, and really work on creating a culture of belonging that honors all our different people practice in different ways their spirituality, but we all practice belonging together. Yeah.
That's beautiful. And the fact that you work with youth that are transitioning to becoming adults, that's a very, sensitive, delicate time in a person's life. And I imagine that with the climate of things in the world right now, that probably brings about a lot of feelings of wanting to know what to understand about why people might mistreat each other, or there might be this climate of uncertainty. What do you find is helpful to them at this time?
Well, we're in a really interesting time, and there's a lot of focus, a lot of studies being done on this with this particular age group. I call them emerging adults, 18 to 25-year olds. And it's a very interesting time. And the two words you always hear with regard to that age group right now is anxiety and depression, which I think is so sad because these are the future leaders, and they are really troubled a lot as a whole community with anxiety and depression. And there's a lot of work being done now to understand the effects of changes in technology over the years. And when I first got to Endicott, I was amazed because communication has always been my spiritual practice. Like, let's get face to face, let's let it go, let's dialogue, let's talk, let's engage, let's listen, let's be an open, non-judgmental listening for one another, a mindful listening for one another. And a lot of kids, this one person said to me, "Oh, these kids don't even know how to tell their roommate not to use their shampoo." Like the simple practicalities. Because a lot of times we're on the phone. The phone has become sometimes a barrier. And then a lot of information's coming in. You can't check what it is. It's a lot faster than when I was a kid. You didn't get that much information in a day, so you had time to be mindful and process things. And that's why I made mindfulness one of my key focuses at Endicott is that, let's put down the phone, let's take a moment, let's become more self-aware. And I think it's so important to that age group right now because there is great people as people have ever been. People are beautiful creations and have interests and are up to something. But there's a lot of comparison, a lot of self-doubt, a lot of not knowing where you fit that gets generated by the technology, by the social media, and I'm not against any of the technology or social media. I just feel like we need to learn how to be in communication with one another with it. We're not going to go back, but we have to learn how do we still need to know who we are. That hasn't gone out of date. We still
Yeah.
need to show compassion. We still need to understand who we are. We
Hmm.
still need to have our unique gifts. So how are we going to do that now in this day and age with these tools that we have without letting the tools run us? And it always reminds me of, I think it was Yogananda who said, the mind is a wonderful servant and a horrible master.
Mm,
And technology is a wonderful servant and a horrible master also. And it's good to kind of understand who we are and take responsibility. What are we trying to accomplish?
mhm.
And then what tools do we need to use? And then all these things are at our disposal. But it's a very interesting time to be with young adults and try to help them through this time and figure out what they are going to do with their lives and how they're going to live. And then on top of it, the world is just swirling and
Oh,
changing,
right. Right.
going through
Because,
many changes. So even what you thought last, isn't good. So
right.
the
I mean, it's already a challenging time without everything that's going on.
exactly,
Um, and,
exactly.
and I think at this stage, in the spiritual realm, like in the sense of bringing spirituality into the conversation, that it's not so much about what people specifically believe in, right? They're not necessarily what their faith is specifically. It's really about bringing some sense of peace to the moment. So as a chaplain, can you talk a bit about your journey, what that was like for you?
Yeah, I became a chaplain kind of because the executive director of the Interfaith Seminary, Jay Spates, said you need to be a chaplain. I take chaplaincy training, and I thought, okay, I'm never going to be a chaplain, which I've been now for 8 years. But
Amazing,
just amazing,
amazing.
and
Yes.
but I said okay, and so I went through chaplaincy training. I have 4 units of CPE chaplaincy training, which I so appreciate. Um, and a lot of what chaplaincy is about is being holding presence, the ministry of we talk in the Interfaith Seminary, the new seminary, but we talk a lot about the ministry of presence.
Yes.
Chaplaincy is a lot about the ministry of presence. It's about being able to be with somebody and really listen deeply to what are they dealing with. And one of my university chaplain buddies, said to me the other day that he had hung over his desk a sign that said, I'm going to look at it so I don't say it wrong. It said, every human is carrying a secret and heavy burden. And he said it just reminds him that even if people come in and they're social and they're smiling and they're this and they're that everybody's carrying something. We
Yes.
all are. And not that we have to be down about that. I'm pretty joyful of a person and I don't usually go there with being really down. But I have plenty that challenges me in my life, and we all do. And, everybody has something that they have. And how are we being with one another? And so in chaplaincy, I'm kind of always thinking, how am I being with these people? That's uplifting. That's letting that secret maybe come out or that heaviness get lightened up. To me, that's a beauty. That's work worth doing.
Yes.
If I have that happen in the course of a day with a few students, that's worth
Yeah.
everything.
It's
Yeah.
sacred. It's really sacred work when you can create that space. And I know that you've really, I mean, I want you to brag a bit because I know that you took this opportunity and showed them how you could really bring an interfaith, inclusive, you know, community to a small private institution. And you did this on your own. Can you please talk a bit
Yeah.
about that?
Yeah, I have no background in higher ed, and I'm sort of like a not school kind of person. My whole life, I'm like a not school, not school, not school kind of person. And back in 2017, I found myself in the North Shore of Massachusetts, and I have a consulting practice called the Inspired Circle, and I work with people doing coaching and having groups and whatever, which I still do on the side of what I do. But in 2017, I came here and I saw this job for a part-time chaplain. And because Dr. J had sent me to chaplaincy school, I was all ready to go. I'd never done it before, but I went and talked my way in the door to have this 20-hour a week job there. which quite frankly could have been a nothing job. Say the prayer at graduation, talk to a kid if they lost a parent or something, once in a while have something to do. But nobody was really looking over my shoulder. No one had really done much with the position before. But when I got there, everything I'd ever done my whole life, and then everything I'd studied in my doctorate, my master's at the new seminary, my being ordained, everything I'd ever thought about was right in front of me, these students. And
Yeah.
then we went through COVID on top of it all. And that was all there was to do, was kind of help people get through that time and get back to school and go through, testing and all this other stuff. And so after I was there for a little while part-time, I asked them if I could be there full-time because I really saw that little things I was doing was making such a big difference, like doing a 10-minute meditation, which I'd never been into that much. I mean, I had meditated a little bit, but I was not a meditation teacher, which now I have so many certifications, it's absurd. But I I had never really had that as my big thing I was pushing. But
Mm.
I saw how much people needed to just stop and take a moment and a breath. And I had started a thing called Gull. Our mascot is the seagull. We're called the Gulls, and our sports teams are the Gulls. So I started a thing called Gulls Pause, and kids would come and they'd put down the phone and they'd meditate for 10 minutes. And we sort of learned together how to be mindful. And it was so impactful that I asked to go full time, and they made a position and a department and we had a chapel on campus that they renovated into a center for belonging, which now it's just open to nature. So it has no specific religious affiliation by the windows or anything. And it used to have a big cross and stained glass windows like a chapel would and like a Christian chapel would. But our school's not it's a multi-faith campus. And so now it's the home of all our faith groups, all our social justice groups, all our identity groups, and we just keep expanding and expanding and expanding. It's been miraculous. And I really, they wouldn't have done that without me. Sometimes it's you, and when
Right.
it's you. And
Which is why I wanted you to brag about it
yeah,
because
yeah,
we're very proud of you in all that you have really you've t taken a small seed, right? A nudge by Dr. J, which many students have done, and really turned it into a wonderful, endless possibility of, what it can be ongoing. And that says a lot about, how we can take our own path and really carve it to shape who we are, right? It can resemble all the things that we've learned over the years of being on this planet.
absolutely,
And that's,
absolutely.
you're a shining example of that. Sure.
Exactly. I'm so really proud of it. And I'm really, I really owe a lot to the new seminary for that. And being I'm a member of the Interfaith Temple. My ordination belongs to the Interfaith Temple. That's my ordaining body. And so I feel very honored about
Yes,
that.
it's your home. It's your home of belonging
My-
forever.
Exactly.
Yes,
Exactly.
your forever home.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to also ask a bit about is your own personal journey into, what brought you to the new seminary back in, what was it, 2005?
Seven, well, five, yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
started in 2005. I got ordained in 2007. I'd been doing work when I was 23, as you said. I went to work for a company that did transformational seminars and was very popular in the 70s, particularly, and 80s. And then, and at that time, they would bring over a lot of the Eastern leaders, and I would meet them, the Karmapa, the Dalai Lama,
Mm,
the Sananda. I mean, it was really kind of I was a young girl, kind of, and I
fun. That must
didn't
have been
know,
fun.
yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't know a lot of these things. And I've always been interested. I was brought up Jewish, but I've always been interested. I never could figure out why, like I always could hear there's something at the heart of all faith.
Yes.
and no faith. There's just something at the heart of belonging and spirit. And so I've always like loved the teachings of different religions, and I've always kind of tuned in there and been called there and like to go to something if somebody invited me and whatever. And back in I guess in the 90s, I started going to New Mexico a lot and to different sites like the Sanctuario de Chimayo and places like that, where very, very spiritual feelings, very big spiritual connections on the planet. And I that's what I would do when I would travel. I would explore these places and these different faiths and go to different kind of services and whatever. And I really saw in even in my corporate work that what was always, and believe this to this day, that we're in a spiritual crisis, in my view, that it's not time, organized religion has kind of run its course, maybe. There's still some good to it, but it's not the same as it was. Kids don't, when I was a kid, you went to Hebrew school or you went to confirmation or you went to this or you went to that. And somewhere you learned about the virtues through whatever your family's path
Mm,
was. That is not what's going on today,
mm,
necessarily. People are not going to religious training. And I don't think we should go back to that. I'm not suggesting that, but it's never been replaced by anything.
right.
So to me, you need to, I also practice shamanism, and shamanism is about reaching into the spiritual or the invisible world to bring back messages that have relevance to the practical and worldly. And you know, there's nobody, I think it's too dry just to work out like who's making the most money and who's making the most transactions and who's doing what to who. That gets so tiring without understanding things like courage and love and compassion and understanding bigger, you know, eternal ideas that have been around. I call them the virtues, like fundamental powers that we
Right.
all need to be dealing with. And so in my work, I was always trying, even in corporations, to bring that in
Mhm.
and to say, you know, you can, build whatever. When I worked for Hewlett Packard, they were building the leading edge at that time, leading edge computers, calculators. This is back in the day of I forget what they called their thing, but whatever, their computer that was ahead of everybody else's at the time.
Yes.
And who cared if they couldn't be honest about when it was getting manufactured, or they couldn't have compassion for each other getting along, or you need other things that are invisibles, that are whatever. And this is always what I was teaching in my work. And so around 2005, I thought I really need to find some way to study more intentionally the
Mm,
different religions and figure out why am I what to do with all that? How do you bring that? And so I kind of did some research and somehow came to the new seminary. And I thought, oh, I'll be an interfaith minister, whatever. I didn't even know what that meant at the time. And I did it at that time, you could do it like a correspondence course. They did the weekends in New York, and then they would send the materials on like CDs, and then you'd listen, and then you had a dean and you'd do your work. And then you only had to go to a few meetings a year in person. And I thought, okay, I can do that. And I didn't know what I was going to do with it. At the time, I had a company, and part of that company, we did seminars, and then we had groups in different cities all over the United States and Canada that formed kind of a community that were working together discussing all of these thing. So I thought at very least I'll marry people, I'll be able to do marriages for people in the community. I'll be able to do baby name, whatever. I'll learn how to do all that too. So that's how it started. I didn't ever think that would be what I did professionally, but it did turn out that way. So yeah, and then I got ordained, and then and then I was still with my company, and my company dissolved in 2014, I guess. And I decided to go back and get my master's and my doctorate of ministry with the new seminary. And I
Mhm.
took a couple of years and really thought about, do I want to make that my front, like instead of it being my back thing, it would be my front thing. Not
Yes.
much in the background, but in the foreground. And so it has since then.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't realize that there's a lot of creative ways to use this path to create careers. Even, people that are having a second transition, like retiring or going through a big life transition, that they can create a whole new career um,
Absolutely.
out of this work
Yeah, absolutely.
creatively, right?
Yeah,
Creatively.
yeah. And it makes you listen differently. It makes you think of yourself, being an interfaith minister it's not just, oh, I studied these things and then they gave me that. It does alter, I really took seriously all the conversations we have in seminary about formation, I guess I would call it, how,
Mhm.
now I am this. And when I walk in the world, this is who I am, and how am I going to use that? And I have always been blessed by being able to walk. Some people are very spiritual and they have to do very, very, very spiritual things,
Yes.
and they don't fit so much in the business world or the school world or
Mm.
maybe like a more worldly way. For some reason, I think my path has always been where it comes together. And so I'm never over, I always kind of look over like there'll be somebody who can really do a lot of rituals and that comes to them very easily and whatever. And I'm less that way. And I'm more, how do we bring this to our life and our worldliness? And I don't think one's better or one's worse. People are just
Right.
different.
They have their gifts for what they
Exactly.
are.
Yeah, yeah. And so I know that's where that's my path, is to connect those worlds. And
Amazing.
yeah, yeah.
Amazing. And I wanted to speak a bit about transition because I know that you've recently had a big life transition. And I want to know how your path has helped you through that, if you want to tell us a bit
Sure,
about
sure.
it.
Yeah, in 2023 in the summer, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. That's what you're talking about? Yeah. And I thankfully there's been so much work done in the area. They know so much, they can pinpoint whatever.
Yes.
Never good to find out you have cancer. Believe me, it's never like it's kind of a daunting moment. But I decided that I would go through it kind of with my community, and I was very open about it. And I had surgery, and then I had to go through chemo and radiation, and I kept working. I kept as much as I could. My philosophy was, everybody said, do whatever you need to do. If you need to, do whatever you need to do. And I did do whatever I needed to do. And a lot of it had to do with going to work, to be honest.
Yeah.
So as much as I could, which not always I could, but as much as I could, I went to work. I lost my hair publicly. I grew it back publicly. I went from straight to curly publicly, which was kind of fun. And now I'm almost 2 years cancer free. And yeah, and that was that was again an interesting place where spirituality and practicality comes together. I didn't have the worst case in the world, which I'm, so grateful for, but still, it was quite it's kind of a wake up call. I'm 71 years old, and your mortality
You mean
kind of
71 years young?
is young, and it gets your attention and you go like, oh, and then a lot of my friends are retiring and this and that. And you think, should I? And I think, no, my philosophy is, instead of retire, get re-inspired. I
Yeah.
enjoy my work too much to be to me, retired sounds, not to insult anybody who's retired, but it sounds a little bit like get tired again.
Well,
And
right, it's words, right? Words really do have power. They really do. And it brings me to the the thing that, the foundation of the seminary was who was founded by Rabbi Joseph Gelberman. And
Yeah,
one thing he said was there should have been another commandment, and it's thou shalt have purpose. And
absolutely.
I feel like so much of what you're saying is it resonates with what he meant. It's like, it's because you had purpose with these kids and with the passion that you carry with your work, that's what really brought healing for you and comfort.
Yeah, I actually met Rabbi Gelberman back in I guess in the 90s. And that was a trip also. And I had no
Funny.
idea. Yeah, it was funny. I did a class with him about, speaking of words, about the meanings of the different letters in the Hebrew alphabet,
Ah,
numerology. I didn't even know what he was, to be honest, no clue what he was talking about, but I was fascinated with
mhm.
just his space of being. He was so open to everything. And he was a rabbi. He was who he was, but he was so open to everything. And
Love,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
I think it's so important for all of us, you know. Yeah,
Mm-hmm. And what I think is also so beautiful about the legacy of our, foundation is the fact that here we were in turbulent times, such as similar to right now.
right.
And, these visionaries, Swami Satchidananda, Rabbi Gelberman, they found brotherhood and love first with each other,
Yeah,
then found out just through spending time and listening to each other that they shared the same vision, that, that we're all one, that we're all, really at the essence of who we are, no matter what we believe, that it's all really coming from the same um, creator.
exactly. Exactly. Yeah,
And
totally.
that's what's so beautiful, that even through turbulence, through de
Right,
challenging times, like, similar to right now, um,
right.
that it's those moments that we break through and realize that those lights, those voices need to be heard.
Exactly. And that we need to develop our voices, right? I
Hmm.
think a lot of people kind of find there's a little bit too much. I always talk to my kids about the students about, I shouldn't call them my kids,
They're
but the
your kids.
students
It's
about
okay.
this, that we focus too much on fitting in and not enough on finding our fit.
Yeah,
And
I
finding
like
your
that.
fit requires leading it. You have to lead. You're going to always, no matter who you are, for you to really be who you are, you have to be who you have to lead who you are into the world. And there isn't an already like place you just plug yourself into and
Well,
then
it's
have,
a choice, right? Too, because I even with technology, it can really enhance one's experience of this world in a way that we could never do when we were younger. We had to go through lots of research and books that were this fat, called encyclopedias for the young
yeah,
audience.
yeah, yeah.
Um, but it took hours and hours and hours to, which sometimes was fun, but to find out the information that is right, like a click of a
Yeah,
few words puts you into a whole universe of information. That how do we bring that, um, presence to a person's reality? I try to tell my kids, like, I had to spend hours to do what you can do in 2 seconds. How does that feel?
exactly,
You know,
exactly.
how does
Yeah,
that resonate? But I
yeah,
think that the work that you're doing, that your purpose is so clear, that it's wonderful to know that even if it's happening in a small spot in Massachusetts,
right.
these are the things that, we come out of this um, opening and this wake up call to
Yeah.
do this work.
Yeah, and I hope that people who are coming, I haven't been many years. I was a dean at the school and came to a lot of the seminary activities, but even though I'm not around there as much, I really hope that the people who are becoming interfaith ministers realize first of all, how open it is to create something. Like you could create something. It doesn't, there's not going to be an invitation necessarily to fit in. You have to make something happen. But there's a lot to do. There's a lot of work for us
Yeah,
to do.
I think also the biggest challenge I find that people that are coming into school, right? They think of it as a school, but what a lot of people don't realize, it's really an unschooling of the
Exactly.
walls that have been around you for so long in forming you that now you have an opportunity to really discover yourself. And
Absolutely.
as uncomfortable as those moments can be at times, they're also the most liberating. And I know that with your experience working through the years supporting Dr. J, that you've seen all versions of,
Exactly.
people that come through the seminary and how many of them have used it as a way to grow. And
Absolutely.
that's
To contribute. Yeah. And to
right,
really,
to contribute, to grow, to find that root of our existence. And
yeah.
what would you say to anyone that is watching this, that is seeking and may come to the door of the new seminary as a curiosity? What would you say to them?
Hmm. I think I would say what we've been talking about, which is come and listen. And if you don't know, maybe you have something already, an idea already forming in your mind of how you can contribute. That's like a little seed that can grow into a big tree. So, the seminary can be a place to water that seed. And some people don't even know if they have a seed. They don't even know what that
That,
is. And
yeah,
it's always discoverable. It's always there for each person. It's always there. And there's nothing more important than getting in the getting in the game and starting to practice. I never studied philosophy very much. And lately I've gotten all fascinated with Aristotle. If you won't believe I'm going to say this to you.
wonderful.
And I didn't understand ever what he was talking about, but what he was talking about was that people, in order to be virtuous, ethical, good, contributing people, need to practice virtue. They need to practice these eternal truths. And
Yeah,
so if you hear any inkling of truth in that, then you could enter the seminary just on that alone. Like, I'm going to come in and I'm going to practice virtue. I'm going to practice power. I'm going to practice what it takes to be a contributor in the world. And you will find what that is for you. Some of you know what it is for you, but some may not. And,
mhm.
and and for some, you may think like I thought I knew what I would do with it. But I think if you're open, there's so many different things you could do, including just keep doing what you are doing and be an interfaith minister and see what happens. That was kind of
Right,
what I did. And now it's my job, but
right.
I didn't really seek that out. It finds you as well.
Mhm. Yeah, and another thing that Rabbi Galverman would say is that that you're partnering with God or whatever it is you believe to be your higher power, that you're in partnership. And I love how you always in the classes that you've given over the years talk about that the I am is more a verb, right? That it's more of not this like blank statement but that it's a moving, living thing, breathing thing. And we evolve as we experience different things.
Yeah, that was the heart of my doctorate. My thesis for my doctorate was that I am is inspired leadership, that it lights a spark. Whatever follows I am this or that creates, and it's a
Yes,
power. Um,
yes,
and it's a power found in every major religion in the world.
sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Mm.
And if you work in the world of sound and vibration, that sound was the original tone that we're born to, that
Ex-
ah and the I am. So it's it's it goes beyond anything that we can even put a little category into, and it's amazing work.
It
Um,
really.
so I want to know more about, what you're up to besides, the work that you do at Endicott. Tell us a little bit more about what
I'm
you're.
I'm really in the middle of now. I have a couple of groups going that are what I call the inspired circle, which is just people coming together and talking about the kinds of things we're talking about here today and pulling strings. Like we've been pulling the Aristotle string lately. I don't know how I got onto that, but it's been a very powerful learning for teaching for all of us. So that's a kind of an open thing, but I'm really working right now. I don't, it's not all, the ink is not all dry, but I'm going to put up a website soon to offer more coaching and consulting and really figure out what working with people like you know, I'm not planning on leaving Endicott anytime soon or the work that I'm doing, but alongside of what I'm doing, and then perhaps as I always think I have an encore. I always think, what am I going to do when I grow up? I've been saying that my whole
It's
life. And
beautiful. It's a beautiful
uh,
way to be. Hmm.
yeah, so maybe in my 80s, I'll have this other coaching practice. But yeah, I really want to work with people exactly about what we're talking about to not let the spiritual part go, to be rigorous about that, to be on purpose about that. Like we cannot get so consumed with what we have and what we have to take care of. And I know they say it's the economy, stupid, it's your health, it's your this, it's your that. Yeah, it is kind of all those things,
Hmm.
but bigger than that is, and more eternal than that is, I am and who we are and what creation and whatever made this crazy, the greatest creation, and there's nothing more amazing than life.
Yes.
And I don't understand where that came from or where that's going. And we have to have honor about that. And I
Mm.
think when people do, whether they make more money or less, whether they every single thing in their life works or it doesn't, gets to be less the issue. And there can be joy and happiness. And when there's health, there's less, I don't age much. I mean, everybody always is surprised when I tell them my age because
Yes.
I have more energy and and all the things people are looking for. I get more from that spiritual connection than I
Hmm.
get from anywhere else. And so not to go off into spirit without connection to the real world.
Hmm.
I'm really good at connecting those two things, and I want to help people to do that
Hmm.
so that their practical lives look like a reflection of their
Yeah.
life. Yeah.
Yeah. Like a beautiful bridge, like an integration bridge of,
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
the many aspects of ourselves. It's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah,
Well, you're
thanks.
such an inspiration, Gail. I'm really, just blessed to know you.
Thank
And
you.
I've seen your amazing work and, how you inspire others. And I would love to hear from you before we go. Just give us whatever comes through, through spirit right now. Um, give us some words about how to get through, these uncertainties through these times. What would you share with our audience?
Yeah. Um, don't let anything take up space in your mind. Don't let what doesn't belong there come in. Wake up in the morning, center yourself in gratitude, in love, in compassion, and then notice what's going on in the world and continue.
Mhm.
Um, don't let it shake you. Don't become mean. Don't become against. Don't become, I'm really this has been my path. The meanness in the world is really bothering me right
Yeah,
now and should bother all of us. So
yeah,
there's no reason to fight against it, then you just become mean back.
yeah,
And what there is to do is bring compassion, bring love, find the power in that, take care of the people around you, put a smile on people's face. Um, don't dwell too much on the news. Don't get too wrapped up. Gandhi said, I say this to myself every morning. Gandhi said, love will always prevail and dictators and kings will always fail. And I say that to I don't know if that's his exact quote, but that was the meaning of it. But
Yeah,
every morning as I walk out my door, I say, love will prevail and love will prevail. Compassion will prevail. We may go through whatever we go through,
mhm.
but love will prevail. And I trust that. And I hope everybody else can find their way to that too.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Those are great words.
Yeah.
Thank you again, Dr. Gail, for being here with me. And we are forever family.
Yeah.
And hopefully soon you'll come to the temple and do something with with the attendees. And anytime you want to come, and I'll share if there's anything that you're doing in the future, I will share with the audience.
Terrific. Thank you so
Yes,
much.
thank
Thanks for
you.
having me. Yeah.
Yes, thank you.